That sink, though, with reports of a slowdown or a crash landing in some parts of the realty market. Latest data shows prices in 1 in 3 cities in China down last month. Now the country's #2 developer, Evergrande Real Estate, warned of flat sales for the year in a gloomy market in the first quarter. Peter Churchouse is chairman and MD of Portwood Capital and joins us with more on this subject. Morning, sir.
Oh, good morning, Bernie.
I haven't seen you since the new year.
Since Christmas, yes.
China's just kind of fallen apart. You kind of wish that maybe somebody would buy houses and give them away as gifts, but nobody seems to be doing that.
I'm not sure it's fallen apart. The underlying demand is still pretty strong. But it is true that the transactions volumes since the peak of the market in 2010 have fallen about 50%, the weekly volumes. And prices in the top 10 tier 1 and 2 cities are down about 15%, blended price for new transactions.
What's the culprit here? Is it a mixture of things? Is it the unavailability of mortgage facilities, or is it expectations of further price depressions of people waiting?
I think it's entirely, I would say probably 85-90% has been driven by government policy actions, where people are now having to cough up bigger down payments. They're not allowed a second home or a third home. There's all sorts of restrictions. If you put them down on an A4 sheet of paper, you'd need 5 sheets of paper to put these, list out all these administrative restrictions they put on.
This was a page that they shouldn't have taken out of Hong Kong's book. I mean, you can't, people just have not been able to come up with 50% down payments, which is why the market here has been frozen in its tracks. As well. Why don't they just lift those administrative measures?
Well, I think they probably will as the economy slows down.
That, though. You hear the mayor saying, no, this is going to continue, because we don't want another bubble to persist.
No, they will definitely do that. Once you start to see the non-performing loans in the property companies coming through to bite the banks, you will see easing very quickly. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And you're going to see that. We had $2.7 trillion of new lending went into the markets in 2009, 2010. It's estimated about a quarter of that went into real estate. So $670 billion went into real estate, probably much more. Now, if even 5 or 8 or 10% of that start to be non-performing for the banking system, that's 35 to 50, 60 billion dollar hole in the banking system in China.
Can you put it in perspective? Because everybody talks about how great the banks are in China with sub 1% NPLs. What are we talking about in that context?
We all know that it's much, much higher than that. If we looked at loans impaired, not necessarily non-performing, but loans that are more than 60, more than 90 days due, have been extended. The lend and extend scenario that we've seen in the US, that's still happening in China as well. So in effect, you're going to see this year, a lot of those loans which were granted in 2009, 2010 are going to start coming due in 2012. And with the slowdown in the property market in terms of volumes of transactions, the risk that these developers are not going to be able to pay those loans back, that risk is growing by the day. And the last thing China needs right now is to see major problems in its banking system. So it will ride to the rescue, believe me.
It sounds like we can paint this whole space with the same broad brush, probably. In terms of the developer names, the no-go zone in terms of investment?
If we look at the property developers listed in Hong Kong, they're a very different scenario, or a very different kettle of fish compared to the local guys.
We're talking about, just to put in perspective, Country Garden, Shimao.
You're looking at companies like China Overseas Land, China Resources Land, Longfor, all of these very big companies. These companies really don't seem to have a major problem here. They're relatively lowly geared, and they're able to source capital in other areas. They don't have to resort to the shadow banking system in China. They've been able to raise finance here in Hong Kong and the international US dollar bond markets, syndicated loan markets, and some of them are even launching these dim sum bonds. So I think their financial situation is actually much, much healthier. It's the 50 or 60,000 property developers in China that I worry about, not the 40 or 50 that are listed in Hong Kong who are pretty well heeled, and they'll survive.
Peter, I hear there's a lot of basically shuffling going on beneath the surface with this whole campaign to provide reasonable housing for the masses, and that the social housing project is already a failure in many ways because they're using accounting tricks and reallocation of previously announced groundbreakings.
That's right. There are something like the target for last year was supposed to be 10 million houses. I think they basically delivered about half of that. The target for this year is 7 million, and there are 15 million houses supposedly under construction right now. Yes, there's a lot of paper shuffling, there's a lot of fudging of the numbers here, but I think underneath it all there is a genuine effort to grow this sector of the market and to provide affordable housing, as we've done in Hong Kong in the past and as Singapore has done. People need this. There is a perception of need, and certainly the demand is very, very high. You're going to have over 100 million people migrate from the countrysides into the major cities in China over the next 8 or 10 years. There is a huge need to house those people, not to mention rehousing obsolete housing, crumbling housing that's already existing in the urban centres. So I think, as one of your previous speakers was saying, there is a genuine need there. Yes, we're in a cyclical downturn right now, but it's not going to last forever.
Well, these megalopolises are going to get even more mega, aren't they?
Absolutely. Chongqing is a city of 30 million people.
Mexico City or something. Peter, great talking to you, okay?
Great, Benny.